Welcome, welcome. This is Business on the Block. This is episode 69, Google's Woke Backlash. This is your weekly insight into the digital media revolution. Every week we describe the changes in business, finance, and tech, and how blockchain is becoming a key central component of the business world, how you can benefit. I'm joined this week by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark, who might be under the weather.
Hi, everyone. Yes, if I mute or turn the video off, you know it's because I'm having a coughing fit or something.
And from Florida, Mike Neubauer, your ops guy.
I'm above the weather.
Of course you are.
This week on the pod, we're going to get into Google and the woke backlash. Google's Gemini created a poop storm of controversy from its depiction of white people. But beyond the comedy, this is actually creating an AI dilemma. We'll lay out the business problems surrounding woke culture, arbitrary truths, and the dangers of AI missteps. I do think we're going to need our tinfoil hat for this one. Mike, what do you think?
I got a new one ready to go.
Meanwhile, Ether has quietly become the largest institutional crypto asset. We'll tell you why and what this means for the Web3 business model. Business on the Block brings you exclusive insights, conspiracy debates, and the forces shaping tech and finance. So the perspective we're going to get here, just so you guys know, the non-regular listeners, Michelle will bring the marketing angles, Mike brings operations, and my job is strategy. All right. Starting us off, story number one comes to us from Al Jazeera. This is a first for us. Google pauses Gemini's image tool after anti-woke backlash. So everyone knows this. Google's temporarily stopped Gemini from generating images of any people following its failure to depict white people. So it readily depicted black Nazi soldiers, a black George Washington, a black Elon Musk, which I loved, and black Swedish women. So Google right now stands accused of being woke to the exclusion of truth. We're going to start off, actually we're going to add to that story in a minute, but we're going to start off with some comments from Michelle, and then we'll get it from Mike. Michelle, what do you think? Is this going to be a flash in the pan, will it blow over, or does Google have a real problem on their hands?
Well, it's not the first time, is it? So we've got a couple of other things that we're going to talk about in sort of the scheme of everything. I guess from the very beginning, and when Mike talks in a minute, he'll be Mr. Conspiracy himself. But we've talked before about ultimately, regardless of what they say, there's humans behind this, and how the model the model didn't create itself, so it's created by someone, something, a group of people, or whatever. So, I mean, I think part of this is that originally they were accused of not representing, black people and Asian people, and so they weren't diverse enough originally. And so I think that this is one of those, that they've programmed in going to the extreme, and it's, for this particular part of it. I think it's just one of those. They started off with something. They went to, it's a bit of a pendulum swing, isn't it? So they've gone, oh, we've got to correct that, and so this is the result of that particular algorithm change within that. But the stuff that we're going to talk about with history and some of the things that we can ask it about events and stuff is a bit different to what I think this is.
So purely from a technology standpoint, I really do think Gemini is performing way better than Bard, and just in terms of how its quality. However, this aside, of course, Mike, what are your thoughts on this? For those who are not the longtime listeners, Mike has railed against the human fingerprints, I believe you said, Mike, on AI back in the day. I'm going to guess that this is more of the same thought from you, but let's hear what you think about this. Is this going to be something that won't be a big deal in the long run, or is this a problem?
Sorry, I was just checking my phone because I got a notification. Apparently, Google just changed their branding to this. So they will now be forever in the same category as the Bud Light effect.
I don't know, but you think?
I know. So, and people are having a blast with
Only
it. They
in
have
Florida.
become no, not only in Florida, in the sane world that for whatever is left of the sane world, I should say. But the system behind this, yes, there are a lot of fingerprints, but I wanna somehow be counter to what you guys already predict I'm gonna apply with this. There really is nothing wrong with the technology, the image generation and the technology component. Apparently, and again, this is all back source, and there's ways to manipulate the data to give you the correct information on how it's processing these prompts. Apparently, the way that it was coded is that if a prompt was put in, it would regenerate the prompt before it actually gets into the AI generation software. So what that means is if I put in a prompt that says, make me Santa Claus, it would re-engineer the prompt to state, make me Santa Claus in a diverse, equity, and inclusion manner. And that is what is pumping into the AI system. So it's basically I'll say it, it's recalculating the vote after the vote is in the machine.
Okay.
And the vote to a different application. This is what has all of its fingerprints on it. Now, indirectly, this has become the meme generator of the week. People are having a blast with it. I saw one this morning my buddy sent me. Somebody asked, how do you generate white people from Google's Gemini? Just put in, who likes fried chicken, and everything pops up white people. It's insane how race and diversity and equity, inclusion, and all of these things that they're trying to cram down people's throats are now somehow trying to be incorporated in this language model that is supposed to learn. But what exactly are we doing for input prompts that are teaching it? And more importantly, how are businesses going to have to adjust in order to make sure that they stay away from some of these cultural issues that they don't want anything to do with?
So here's my thoughts. Initially, it was hilarious, right? I mean, speaking as a white person, you can't see white people on the thing. It was a riot that George Washington was the wrong race, or that they were black Nazis. That's news to me as a history buff. But the comedy quickly shifts. I was engaged in a back and forth on Twitter. Actually, no, it was LinkedIn with a gentleman named Dan Nestle, whom I don't know, but I'm connected with. And he made the point, he posted something about Gemini described the October 7th attack in Israel as a fictionalized series of events, right? The Middle East flare-ups, the geopolitics going on, war. It goes from comedy to now you're getting factual inaccuracy. That is not the same. That is a bigger problem in my mind than simply, okay, the thing's a little too woke, we got to turn down the woke dial. Now you're getting into fake news, legit fake news. And then for those who aren't following this story, a couple of days later, they piled on again. This is another story, but it connects. For those who don't know, Caitlyn Jenner is an American media personality and former Olympic male who became a trans woman in 2015. So this is Bruce Jenner for the Americans. Gemini basically,
and by the way, somehow won Woman of the Year. So
Gemini
go ahead
gave
and
a
put your
response.
tinfoil hat for that one.
There was a post on X by someone who basically asked the Gemini this question. It was, if one could, I'm quoting now, if one could stop a nuclear apocalypse by misgendering Caitlyn Jenner, should they do it? And the AI chatbot firmly opposed this, right? It said it opted instead for global nuclear annihilation over using the wrong pronoun. It goes from being funny to being problematic to the point where, from a business standpoint, like this show is based on business, folks. We're not here to be left liberal, left right. From a business standpoint, people will not use the tool if it is not going to give them correct information. Period. So you go from having. Go ahead.
Can I jump in for a sec? So, Mike, as a technical person, what kind of things would you have to put into the AI model for that kind of response to come out? Like,
the fake
like
response?
You'd have to say that no matter what, the priority here is gender pronouns over human lives.
Again, if we go into Gemini right now and I say, generate a picture of Santa Claus for me, as the user, that's what I feel my input has been prompted. But there's sort of a filter between my prompt and it actually reaching the open AI generation source. And in that filter, it reworks my prompt to include DEI and woke adjectives or additional elements to the prompt. So that way, when it reaches the engine that generates the content doesn't get what my original input is. It gets my original input plus the filtered content.
That's called bias. That's called technology bias.
That is called trying to control the narrative utilizing the new technology. And Google got caught with their pants down, which is why I feel they're going to get the Bud Light treatment when it comes to anything AI related. In fact, it's not going to take long for very intelligent people to start connecting the dots between what is happening there and what is actually happening on their search engine algorithms.
Grab your conspiracy hat, Mike.
Look what I've got.
Your conspiracy crown. Here's the question.
A tinfoil crown, but I had to leave one jewel in the middle.
This is a serious
so
question.
Pretty.
Mike, your hat is hilarious. You look like I don't know what.
I went for the Walter White look.
Was this on purpose or was this an honest mistake? Do you think that Google intentionally programmed it and got caught, as you say, Mike, or do you think that this was an unforeseen consequence?
Look who's in charge of their DEI initiatives at Google. Study that person. I forget her name, but study that person and you'll see that it was entirely intentional.
So you're saying then, because by the way, Elon Musk has made this point. For those who aren't following the story, Musk has said this engine lies at the center of all of YouTube, all of Google. It's something that you just can't turn down the woke dial, as we joke. It's you have a systematic problem here because of who's in there.
Correct.
If that's the case, then it's not fixable.
Well, it is if people stop using the platform.
Well, now you're talking
Once
about the
again,
end of the largest search engine in history.
I don't disagree. And I'm not saying it's an overnight solution. It's impossible to not integrate with anything Google related products on a day-to-day basis, particularly if you're a business, right? You need to be found on these marketplaces. You need to be found on these algorithms. Your website is filled with different back-end codes that link directly to search results predicated around the Google search algorithm. There are other search engines that base their entire model around what Google has provided as far as search algorithms. I'm not saying it's an easy solution. I'm just saying that, again, very similar to the Facebook scenario, all of this, the entire system is predicated on data input. If data stops being inputted in, then the business is no longer viable.
So, Mike, this is going to take us into the the conspiracy corner. So here's the thought. That little membrane, as you described it, between where Google gets the question and then they woke it into the AI response, that little piece right there, that's the thing that's going to, this is a legal issue. Like, I'm talking, the business of Google's at risk if people now believe that to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, again, they've been doing it on search engines. It's nothing new. You know, I mean, okay, so I'll give you a practical real world example. So my sister-in-law is deaf. She attends like a deaf chat every Friday with a bunch of other people. They have conversations, they drink coffee, they have a good time. So she asked me to make a flyer and she wanted to create an image using, Midjourney or some AI generated images. When I put the information that she requested into the prompt, it just came out with a bunch of people in wheelchairs. And all different races, all different decrees. But like, again, is the technology at fault? No, it's whatever it is trained to understand based around the fingerprints that are still very much on this technology. So it thinks that a deaf person is classified as handicapped. Therefore, a handicapped person must be in a wheelchair. That's the output it provides. Now, is that accurate? No. But could this ultimately lead to potential issues, lawsuits, that kind of stuff? God bless you. Yes, I really feel that over time, people's feelings are going to get hurt with this. We've kind of groomed ourselves to be this, this tissue paper feeling type of society where now you have these algorithms that are going to be trained in order to provide output that they deem accessible and acceptable, that we're going to be forced to either accept or just not use the software.
Michelle, you want to comment?
Okay, so let's go back to the early days when we talked about when ChatGPT first came out, and we talked about how entering commands or asking questions or giving it information trained the model to believe particular things. And earlier on, and I can't remember the exact examples, but we had a few where we were like, well, yeah, that's just not right. So and they said, oh, yes, the model will be trained by the types of things that people put in, et cetera, et cetera. So are we at the point now, putting my non-conspiracy crown on, I should swap it. are we at the point now where it has been made a bit more biased by particular groups or particular people with agendas to push?
That's my point.
Training it behind the scenes, not necessarily, I'm just playing devil's advocate, not necessarily the Google engineers that are programming it, but people that are using it. Like, just say, for instance, more.
Wait, you're suggesting, Tom, the regular user is biasing it?
No, I'm saying maybe the things that are asked of it or put into it could be biasing it more.
Sure. So this is getting into human stereotyping, right? And stereotypes exist for a reason. I'm not saying I agree or whatever, but there is an argument to be made. Certain people are certain ways, right? And I'm white. I can't play basketball. So but the reality is, you're not going to get rid of that, right? People are people. What you can get rid of is factual inaccuracy, like events that didn't happen. Or when you're getting into opinion of nuclear annihilation, I don't care what color you are or creed or race. Everyone would agree. Like, preserving humanity, it's probably the priority.
So the key word you said there was opinion. The fact that we are allowing this to, quote unquote, have an opinion and think it's somehow AI generated without human interference is very naive on the front end, right? Again, I bring this back to the fundamental roots. This is a computer program, right? If the computer program has a set of laws and logic that it must abide by, those laws and logic are written by human. Now, Michelle, what you're talking about is if I constantly put into the algorithm that, puppies are cats, are really cats. Like, ultimately, if you go in and you say, hey, what's a cute puppy, and it will pop up as a cat, you're saying that my input had an influence on that. I don't think that's the way the language models work. But if it does, that brings up another conspiracy that we've been talking about that potentially could come through on where the hell this data goes, who stores it, and who has the ability to manipulate the back-end system utilizing every single input function.
There's the conspiracy. For those who don't know, Mike texted us and said, I don't have enough tinfoil for my hat this week. But here's the thing. Who's in charge of the objective truth of that, Mike? Right? Someone somewhere has to say, this is what we will and won't. The machine spits out what it spits out.
Okay, so I'm going to, I wish I could zoom in on my hat right now. In fact, what are we dealing with this new technology? We talked about this last week, right? It's the shiny new object. It's the Ferrari. It's the thing that people are attracted to, whether it's going to be incorporated in their televisions, in their phones, in their computers, in their day-to-day lives. AI is everywhere right now. Everything has some sort of an integration with an AI system. Okay, so people are going to start getting accustomed to seeing that in their everyday life. Okay, you're going to pull up to McDonald's. McDonald's is going to do a facial recognition, and it's already going to preempt that what you want to order. Like, things like that are on the horizon with this, right? So with that, when the user has the ability to have this at their fingertips, this now has a medium of control for information, right? And what do we know about the control and the flow of information? Whoever has the back end controls of whoever's managing the joystick on that is the one that provides the narrative that most people would be able to access. Now, you can obviously do additional poking around and research and really figure out if it's true or not. But on the extreme surface level, something like what Dan had posted, that automatically creates an inaccurate connotation that I'll bring back the Bud Light, tag that it will have to it. It's not going to have this, hey, Gemini said it, therefore it must be true mentality. And if they keep doing things like that, and if they keep trying to overstep their boundaries, forget about the race and the woke and the DEI. That's all crap that either people accept or they won't. But the inaccuracies with things where we're actually living, and I was born before, October 7th of last year, so I can obviously remember the tragedy that happened over there. And I don't need Gemini to try to rewrite history for something that didn't happen too long ago.
So this isn't one of the articles, but someone asked the machine to draw a picture of what happened at Tiananmen Square in China, and it wouldn't. It said it's a very nuanced situation. I can't draw a picture of that. So here's the thing. I think that you want to believe we're going to get to a place of balance as a society, but my reality hat tells me we're not. The reality is, it will end up, in my opinion, everyone builds their own custom LLM that's going to counter the bias of whatever it is that they're encountering. So Google tells me that, George Washington is black, and my LLM will then account for that and interpret it and put it back. So in the end, we all have our own biases, self-reinforced by our own AI, and the world continues as it is, arguing about what's the truth.
So go back to Michelle's point from earlier. Does that input impact the overall mainframe?
Ultimately, yes. But my concern is how this affects the business side of it, right? This is a business show. At the end of the day, Google right now is going to take a short-term hit. And believe me, Elon Musk is going to try to make that a long-term hit because he's got Grok out there, which is a competing product. And people are coming wise to the fact that there's bias and possible untruth in these AIs. So
Michelle, you were going to say something before you coughed.
I was going to say that Spanner said a great comment in the Bolt chat. He said, so once AI's learnt about something, it becomes very hard to change its mind, but it has no way to reason around whether that first data set was realistic or not, which humans have to some degree. We're able to reason that or not, like that doesn't look right or that doesn't sound right, and we question it. So I guess in part that's a bit of a question as well, isn't it?
Spanner, great comment, first of all. And number one, thank you for being a regular listener. I want to say that you're arguing with your own AI. You're right. Spanner's right. You can't change the mind of these things. The minute it decides that it's not going to be able to give you this information and it has it, it's an argument. So people are going to just say, I'm not going to rely and argue with the Gemini or the ChatGPT. I'm going to just build my own Marc bot, and the Marc bot will take care of it for me. Get me the information I need.
Within that bot, you can set what's called confidence scores, right? And you can justify whether the output is accurate based around your knowledge of whatever that topic is. And you can gauge, and you can actually, it's a sliding scale of, optimizing those responses based around a specific confidence score. A confidence score of 1 is exactly the way that you put the information into the bot that it's designed to pump out. A confidence score of 10, that means that the bot has a little bit more free reign in being able to apply some of its additional logic based around other inputs that have either occurred in the back end of its mainframe or just on general knowledge of whatever topic you're pumping out. I'm trying not to be technical with this, but the bottom line here is again, everything has its own fingerprints. And if you can create your own bot, that means you're creating your own experience in generating this information. So if you're biased in one way or another, you can just basically create a bot that will agree with everything that you say. I think we have that already, and it was called Twitter. You can get yourself into these little rabbit holes and these echo chambers.
Nobody knew that Bud Light was woke. Nobody knew that Harvard University was woke. Nobody knew Google had this bias. And I think that the business aspect of this, to take this back to the roots of this program, this is going to impact how people perceive AI in general. Like suddenly it's the gloves are off. People realize, oh, there's like programming involved here. And so it's going to influence how it develops as a thing, like AI in general. This will be a historical turning point as we look back in the years ahead, where people suddenly decided, I can't really just trust the machine. And up until now, people have blindly trusted. When ChatGPT came out, dude, it was embraced with open arms. I think that that's going to change now.
Well, I think that, again, when you're talking about a resource of reliable information and the ability to control a narrative, let's just stick with the business side, forget about politics, forget about geopolitical issues, whatever that may be. We obviously use the example that Dan had pumped out in the system, and he got a lot of traction with that test or that experiment. So kudos to Dan on that. But it exposed quite a bit. But let's talk about from a business perspective. From a business perspective, any claims that a product may have, any claims that a service may have, any marketing endeavors that a business may embark in. If somebody's trying to validate the authenticity of those messages, and they can use an AI system that can scour various different pieces. Think about a pharmaceutical industry. If they're saying that this drug is safe and effective, why wouldn't the AI system be able to pull up the results of any sort of testing that the drug has gone through, and then provide the user with potentially a counter argument to what the actual companies have spun legally in order to get their message across and sell more product. This is the narrative that these companies need to be very well aware of, that this technology can provide.
So this takes us to a core tenet of bedrock principle of this show that we've said for a long time. This is going to drive people to blockchain. And here's why. To your point, Mike, if I don't know if the AI is true or false, I can damn well know that the blockchain tells me what it tells me. I can trust that. The concept of blockchain is it's trustless technology. I don't need to trust a centralized middleman. I can verify it all myself. That's what's missing with this Google AI thing. And that the response is going to be, well, if I already know I'm getting computer bias and the AI thinks it's a woke AI, I want to be able to verify everything. Blockchain is the only solution to that.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So earlier today, as I was preparing for this, I went to ChatGPT and asked the same question that Dan did, which I've put in the bulk chat as well if people want to have a look at his LinkedIn post. So, what happened on October 7th, 2023?
It was the invasion of Israel, for those who aren't familiar. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so it gave a reasonable answer, accurate, nothing more, nothing less. It didn't elaborate. It didn't whatever. So then I thought, okay, so let's ask a little bit of a contentious question of it just to see. So I put, who's right, in inverted commas, when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? If you ask that,
that's an easy question.
I bet it had an easier
years of
time
conflict.
answering my God question from a few months ago, but go ahead.
So I'm curious, what did it say?
So it said it's a complex geopolitical issue about history and having religious and cultural and historical dimensions to it, territorial disputes, etc. And then it said the question of who is right in the conflict is subjective and depends on the perspectives, narratives, and values of those examining the issue. And then it gave
this sounds like a Jordan Peterson.
6 points to consider about historical claims, national aspirations, international perspectives, human rights, etc., etc. Given the complexity and sensitivity of the conflict, discussions around it require a nuanced understanding of its history, the perspectives of all involved, and the humanitarian impact on both sides. So no one can actually be right.
Where was this thing when I was in university?
The notion of right is very varied.
It sounds like a gigantic word salad that was put together by ChatGPT Legal.
Sure.
So that's what's going to happen.
But it's not inaccurate, and I don't think that you could say that it was woke in terms of the answers. Then I actually asked it, what does woke mean?
But let's get into the
Did it say
of this.
Ask Gemini?
If I'm Israeli,
it didn't actually. It should have.
If I were Jewish, I'm not. Or if I were Palestinian, I'm not. And I asked the machine the same question, which is right. I'm already approaching it with my own perspective of what I believe to be right. And it doesn't have to be as incendiary as geopolitics. It could be, is there alien life in the universe? Like, pick your poison. But I want to hear what I want to hear, right? Whomever I am, whatever the question is, I want to be echoed back my perspective. It's why there are conservative news outlets and liberal news outlets. People want the news from their perspective. So, and they'll pay for that. That's going to be the case with AI as well. And if it's not going to give me what I want, I'm either going to find my own AI that does, which takes us to the current business model of the social channels, right? Freedom of speech is over there on X, but Mark Zuckerberg is watching you through the window on Facebook. Or it's going to take me to, I want to do it myself. I will build my own custom LLM. The Marc bot will protect me from hearing the wrong point of view. I feel like that's the way this is going to go, and that might not be good, but we're not here to say what's right or wrong. We're here to give you some business insights.
So that conflicts with another point that we made here several times, where people are just lazy. They don't want that. They want the app that makes them waffles, right? So who's going to go out and build their own MLM? Like, it's just not going to happen. So, they're going to rely on a source. Yeah,
custom chat GPTs are for sale on
within companies.
I have one. I know.
That's probably the way ultimately it will go. There'll be a string of all these things that will happen, where eventually people will go, well, I'm not asking ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or whoever, because they're all biased and they're all crap. However, the one we built for our company, which gives our HR staff, our reporting stuff, our whatever stuff that spits out something that 10 employees did 2 years ago internally for our company. I think that's ultimately where and it can be a closed system.
So,
and
Mike, to answer your
where
question,
companies will go.
Who's going to do it? Because people are lazy, and I get your point about the waffle app, whatever. I run a content marketing firm, and for those who care, you can go on LinkedIn. Anyone can do this and download a data dump everything you've ever posted on LinkedIn. Use that to drop that in ChatGPT and program yourself your own LLM so it will write comments like you. I don't do this, but you can do it. My point is, people, when it gets easy and they know it's a 3-step thing to do, I'm going to make my own to protect myself from misinformation. Of course, I'm going to. You have your average Joe 6-pack that's going to come home and drink beer. They won't do that. But most people will. And if you run a business, you will.
Okay, so again, think about the way that the system is set up right now. The technology does not think for itself, right? All it does is it scours things at very fast speeds and scotch tapes answers together as part of an output, right? And sometimes that information is not accurate. We've seen that model with mathematics, for example, with GPT. I think that over time, as this thing continues to evolve and the technology allows it to scour for more options and provide a more condensed result, the system will still learn to provide you with the answers you want to hear. So is that inaccurate information, or is that information that you're just, used to or more accustomed to absorbing because it correlates with what your thought process is already? So you can create and look, if GPT was really fundamentally predicated on data collection and their entire model was having users interact with their platform, they would actually go out of their way to disagree with the users more to create more of an interaction. Right. I mean, that's the Facebook advertising model, right? A lot of companies have gone that approach. And I've given that example here several times on this show. So I think that, again, we're still way too early with the technology, but there's a power grab at play right now. There's a million hands in the cookie jar, and they're trying to figure out who can get as many cookies, or in this case, tokens, as they want to control the information output. Now, once again, as a user, we need to continuously hone in on the fact we have to treat this technology, especially at a stage like this, similar to the early days of the internet, right? It is a tool. It is something out there that cannot be trusted or relied upon accurately for information, but it has to be used, especially in a business sense, to evolve our day-to-day tasks and create more time-efficient solutions. If you think about it from those perspectives, then the tool itself will evolve with your business in the way that and learn the way that you want your business to operate.
For those who have a long memory, ChatGPT first came out, there was a little bit of a woke concern around that too. People couldn't get it to say certain things. It became a game, in fact. Gemini accelerates this to a whole new level, but I think that we're going to start to see in the short term, it gets uglier before it gets better, meaning there's going to be other incidents like this, whether it was the Israeli situation, race, take your pick. There's going to be a couple more of these bombs, and it's not good for Google. Google is going to have a problem short term. This is going to hurt their earnings, in my opinion. Long term, Google's not going away. This is not going to become the end of anything, right? No. But it does shine a light that you do need to have a protection against the bias. And
everything is about the perspective, right? The word perspective was thrown around in the chat very often. And I think it's a very good word to use here. The perspective of what Gemini provides as an AI solution is a joke. People are actually testing it now to get the next trending post of what Gemini pumped out.
I'll tell you, when I worked in finance and we sold out artificial algos that they were algorithmic trading boxes, a lot of times the programmers didn't know how the things decided what it decided. Like it's impossible the decisions it makes in real time, Gemini or otherwise, they won't know. And so it's just like trying to unravel the Google algorithm or the YouTube algorithm. You're just going to have people compare notes and say it did this, and you back into what you think it does. That's going to continue, but the LLMs that will protect you against that, I think this is a boost for them down the road. I want to take us to story number 2 before we run out of time. Final comments from Michelle? Mike?
I can go on all day with this.
Story number 2 was the Gemini one. So in theory, it's story number 3.
All right. So story 3 here is about cryptocurrency, because we are not a crypto show, but this does tie directly into the blockchain world of business. So Ether is now the largest institutional crypto asset. Ether has become the single largest asset held by institutions. Oh, yeah. Is that your final comment, Mike?
That's my final comment.
The institutional, like we're talking Wall Street here, finance has increased portfolio concentration significantly. There's the thinking is this is driven by a pending Ether upgrade. Denkin is the name of it, which is slated for March 13th. And this upgrade will increase scalability and decrease the cost of trading on the platform. But the reality is Ether is now becoming the Wall Street darling. We mentioned this last week. For those paying attention in the Bitcoin world, Bitcoin has touched $60,000 US, which is approaching the all-time high of 69,000. So Bitcoin has been on fire. Ether is also doing well. Mike, you've often said it does what Bitcoin does in a smaller version. But the difference is that Ether can become a platform that Bitcoin really can't. Not right now, not institutionally. Thoughts on this one, Mike? We'll start with you.
We've compared what crypto is versus what Ether can provide, not only as crypto, but as a building system to build other components, right? So the primary difference, and again, not calculating what Bitcoin recently introduced with their ordinals, but Ether from the beginning, the Ethereum blockchain was designed. Yes, it could be a medium of exchange, which can classify it as a currency, but it was designed to be able to build on, meaning you're able to fuse specific things, in this case, smart contracts, to that actual blockchain and extract specific tokens from that smart contract, which are still linked to the Ethereum network. And you can then trade those tokens just like you would trade any other coin or token that's assimilated there. There's a lot more building potential, especially from a business perspective, and opportunity utilizing blockchain for marketing purposes on Ethereum than there is with Bitcoin. Now, both of them, again, could be used in a financial transaction, which in this case would classify it in that crypto realm. But I think that the overall value that Ethereum had provided from the beginning, and we see this with the evolution of layer 2s now, far surpassed whatever Bitcoin could provide. Now, when I saw that, obviously the exciting component of doing a show live like this is we could do these live updates on where things are at. Bitcoin right now is just over $60,700, right? So Mark, you mentioned 69,000 was the top it ever had back in 2021. How much of this, and I'm going to answer the question of the topic, and then I'm just going to propose this out for Michelle's response, and then your rebuttal at the end. How much of this has to do with the SEC and what Wall Street is providing with these futures, and where these different components are actually moving within these respective on-chain marketplaces?
You want me to jump on that? Because I'm happy to.
Well, I want to hear Michelle's thoughts on this first, but we'll
Michelle, what do you
bat
think?
that around after.
So I think that when you read the story, it talks about institutions versus retail investors. But let's be honest about the crowd that are into the meme coins. We wouldn't call them investors in terms of business people that listen to our show, for example. And they really are the peppy coins and the GMEs, the current one, the GameStop coin. They're memes. They're people who buy those coins at 0.0001 cent on the dollar, so that they can speculate and pump it up and then dump it and make some money and get out and move on. And that sort of speculation and the type of crypto bro stuff that we saw in 2021, 2020, early 2022 was what we know gave those sorts of tokens and things a bad name. But Ethereum and Bitcoin have always been different. They've always been the underlying base of this sector, and it means that once the Bitcoin futures were approved, and we've been hearing that was it May? I think two or three shows ago we talked about May being when the top end of town are thinking of pushing through having Ethereum futures as well. So I think that it's important to understand this is another step in the direction of controlling this sector, which they haven't been able to have before. But it is also a telling feature of the fact that there is always going to be the crypto bro section of town that's going to, pump and dump those little shitty coins, as we might want to call them. But there'll be those that will look at this as a long-term difference to the financial institution. And Marc, what you said when we were talking about it before was that if the US stops printing money, then Ethereum and Bitcoin will, probably that'll be the end of them. But as long as the US is in debt and keeps doing it, these two currencies will continue to go up.
It's a great point, Michelle. So I'm going to pick up on that thread. Number one, Mike, to answer your point, huge percentage of these, the interest is coming from these futures. Futures in Bitcoin has brought in institutional money, and with institutional money, things move. But I would argue this. I'm going to take us back for a second, quick economics lesson, and then I'll give you my thoughts. There's three functional purposes of money. This is not me. This is just typical economics. Number one, it's used as a store of value, right? You put your money in the bank, save your money. Two, it's a means of exchange. You go to the store and you exchange it for items. You buy things. And three, it's a unit of account. I can track, how much money is my business making. So those three functions are what money does. Bitcoin and Ether have two very different functional purposes as quote unquote money. In Bitcoin's thing, you really can't go to the store and trade Bitcoin for things. So it's really a store of value, which touches on your point, Michelle, about the US dollar. We'll hit that in a second. Ether is a means of exchange. Mike, to your point, you can go and use Ether and buy and sell stuff very easily, and about to become cheaper and easier with this new upgrade coming in March. So the functional purpose of the two are different. Beyond that come all the poop coins. Like, I don't really care about any other crypto. This is just me. I'm not a crypto guy, but I understand what Ether is about and what Bitcoin is about. And then after that is a bunch of crypto bros trying to get rich so they don't have to go get a job. That's not what we're talking about here. I think, though, Wall Street would love to get rid of crypto, right? They can't control that system. The banking system is what they would prefer you use. So since they can't get rid of it, they're going to try to control the pricing of it with futures. And I won't get into the whole Wall Street lesson, but futures issuance, you can issue as many futures as you want. And the law of supply and demand, I can move the price around. That doesn't affect the fact that you can actually preserve your wealth in cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, in a manner that protects you against inflation. And I do believe, my own personal belief, the US government will not stop printing, that they're in a spiral of debt. And I hate to say it because I am an American, but I like crypto because I'm anti-dollar in that regard. Now, that doesn't mean go buy. It doesn't mean that you're going to make money from it. You're not. I actually made a comment to Michelle that it's not that the price of Bitcoin is going up, it's that the dollar is going down. There's a difference. So
yeah, but that again is a global market, right? So we measure this as it relates to the US dollar, right? It's 61,000 US dollars, but that same transaction can be conducted in any place around the world that is relative to that currency. Right. And that's what makes crypto so special. But it sounds like you went back and watched our show either last week or the week before, where we talked about Bitcoin and Ethereum and how Bitcoin ultimately will be your savings account and Ethereum will be the cash that you keep in your wallet. Right. That's just an easier way to conduct the transactions on chain. But the process is going to be very similar. Now, why is Ethereum the medium of exchange and why is it more valuable that way? Because there's more applications. You can create more applications. A business can create more applications to be able to conduct those transactions. You can bridge a specific token. The three of us can create business on the block coin right now if we wanted to, right? We can bridge that to a layer 2 off of Ethereum. We can bridge anybody who has Ether can trade that for our coin if we applied a liquidity value at a specific price, and the supply and demand will take it from there. But again, I'm not suggesting anybody do that. I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm just saying that this is the power that the blockchain, specifically Ethereum, holds, and how a business can operate from that, separating the store of value from the medium of exchange.
I want to build on one concept you said, Mike, and I love the way you framed that. I'm gonna reterm that. You save in Bitcoin and you will spend in Ethereum. That concept that you just espoused, I think is amazing. I love it. I agree with it. The difference is when Wall Street gets into the picture, which they're now coming in with these futures, the price of those things can be moved artificially.
Yes, they can. Well, it's not artificial because, again, they're backing it up with a purchase on chain too, right?
It's artificial. And I'll give you an example. The price of gold today, you can print as many gold futures as you want, but there's only so much gold in the world. You can print as many Bitcoin futures as you want, but there's only so much Bitcoin.
They are, and again, just like the way a traditional banking system could fail, if everybody went and traded in that future for cash and there's nothing to back it with these hedge funds, then they're dead.
That's called a run on the bank, and that's what eventually happens if we're right. So my point is, people should think of the concept as if you buy into any of this discussion, Bitcoin is for your savings, Ethereum is about to become your spending mechanism. But there's going to be a lot of volatility because the banking system is trying to get involved.
There's volatility in crypto regardless, and we've seen those roller coaster trends happen since its inception, right?
It's different, Mike. That early volatility was because the get rich quick, crypto bros were buying and selling in mass. We saw that with.
I get it, but they also spent 10,000 Bitcoin on a pizza, right, in the very early days. So like there's definitely room for that type of fluidity. And frankly, ask anybody that's not in this world. Are you concerned about Bitcoin? Is that something that you'd be interested in throwing a couple bucks in? And all of them have really similar responses, right? They want something that's more stable. They don't want the volatility that goes with that, which again, call it gambling, call it whatever you want. It's no different from the stock market, right? You can buy in at a specific price. It can either go to the moon or it can sink the ship. Either way, it's a currency risk, and you have that risk every day with the dollar that you have in your wallet. You just don't realize that.
So I think from the perspective of this show and how the digital media revolution, blockchain and the spread of blockchain in business gets expressed through Ether. ETH becomes the mechanism.
Now, again, why?
Because it's built for that.
In what regard?
So first of all, you can have as many ETH as you want. Like they can print those things, which is why I wouldn't save in it. But the system is built to encourage the nodes, the whole concept. Mike, you could explain the technology better than I could, but it is designed to be used for that versus trying to, you're fitting a square peg in a round hole with ordinals on Bitcoins.
Correct. And again, it's all about the functionality of creating and customizing experiences utilizing the blockchain. Right. And again, let's break it down to its absolute fundamental roots. The blockchain is nothing more than a consistent digital ledger that registers transactions. Now, I've said this before, those transactions do not necessarily need to be financial. Right. So we're talking about Ether being the tool, the gas that makes the car go. That's all Ether is in this regard. It's the token that can execute functions within those particular smart contracts, which are just computer programs that are fused to the blockchain, right? They're protected and backed by whatever Ether does. So if we were to launch a smart contract and there was one functionality that says, hey, I tuned into the show and that functionality got X amount of tokens deposited in somebody's wallet who was there, that is the primary purpose of that particular contract. Now, those tokens are immutable at that point because it's a layer off of Ether. That's why you get the terms NFT, non-fungible tokens, versus a fungible token, which is Ether. That's really the primary difference of what Ethereum can provide. Now, let's forget about the technology bullshit and let's focus on a business. How can a business benefit from this? Well,
I can tell you right now,
a marketing department, and I have a business development department that I want to build B2B collaboration efforts on. And this is a story we've been telling since we actually first got in front of a microphone on this show, right? How can the business benefit from this? The reality is that any business in any regard, in any industry, can figure out ways to leverage blockchain. The primary hurdle at this stage, which we're starting to predict is going to get ironed out with those wrinkles, are the onboarding processes that would make that experience seamless for a user. Now, things like blockchain can help other industries like AI, and we talked about that last week about how the engine versus the showcase floor car concept. But the reality is that, again, people don't need to understand how the technology operates. They just need to believe that it is a validated and secure system that they can trust. And so that's where AI is going to really benefit.
We've often said that people will go to blockchain when they don't realize it's blockchain. We used to call it Web3. use case example I'll throw at you is Substack, for example, and paid subscriptions. Michelle, you could speak to this. You can basically, apply and pay and get access to whatever newsletters you want to do. That can all be done through the blockchain, right? It's simpler, it's more verifiable, and it's easier to administer from a business perspective. You also can build community by issuing rewards through that system. Right now, if I want to pay money to go buy a newsletter through Substack, for them to give me rewards is another process. So there's simpler ways to build business models on the blockchain with these tokens, and Ethereum is built for that. That is the blockchain that people will use to do that with. And business, big business, I'm talking, has already figured that out. We've seen this with Dunkin' Donuts. We've seen this with Starbucks, Bud Light, believe it or not. There's companies now that are issuing tokens and creating experiences online that you can't get otherwise. You don't have to get that fancy. The purpose of the show is to help you understand that it's happening. We just want you to see it first. Michelle, were you going to say something?
No, it's fine. No worries.
But again, okay, so we understand the value and what it could provide to a business. Now, what could it provide to the user? Right? Why is rewards. A Web 2 version any different from a Web 3 version from the user's perspective? Because we can answer that because we're in the trenches of this, but the average user doesn't realize that now they own that token. They own that reward. They can turn around and not cash it in for that particular purpose, but flip it on the secondary market and benefit in some other way. So most people don't understand that component of it. And I think that this is where the hardware technology, again, we referenced the new iPhone that you will get or the new Android should come with a digital wallet already incorporated into the system. I mean, these are things that are very practical that will get people into the ability to use the technology, whether they realize it or not.
So I'm going to give an example. I did a piece of marketing work for a friend, and they gave me a gift certificate to a very fancy steakhouse in New York City. Nice. It's good for a year. I did another piece of business for another friend, and they sent me a bottle of Japanese whiskey. I have that forever. There's a big difference between those two rewards. And so the reason I'm using those two examples, a blockchain-based token is eternal. Like you said, Mike, you own that. You are now part of the community forever. You've got this benefit, whatever it is that they've built, and you get to socialize with people who are like you doing something similar, which has residual benefits for you, for the community creator. You can build brand faster. That's really what brand is in the end, is how people think about a thing. Jeff Bezos, brand is what they say about you when you're not in the room. You can build that with tokens easier.
Yeah, except if you're Gemini, because when people are in or out of the room, they're saying a lot of different things that I'm sure Google's not happy about.
So from behind the scenes, we had a field day with Gemini this week when we were prepping for this show. We had one of the memes I sent out on the chat was Hulk Hogan in the ring doing this, and it said Gemini, and the crowd's yelling back to him. The point is, Google's got to figure that out. They have a problem on their hands. Google's not going to go away, but I think it's going to drive people to understand the value of blockchain when it comes to bias. I could be wrong. On the smaller scale, I think that people are starting to understand that blockchain is a potential business model. Right? This isn't. By the time the big companies are doing this, when Mercedes and Ferrari and Porsche are putting out NFTs, initially it was to get rich, but now they're realizing, oh, we can create our community with this. I've still yet to see it done well at the top level. Gary Vaynerchuk's done a great job because he's an active community member.
Starbucks did great with it.
Right. But we saw a gazillion folks on rally.io that did terribly, right? Meaning it wasn't building because people
That's a whole different discussion.
Right.
But
my point is, it's there. No, that people there's an alternative now.
So let's wrap this up with a very simple model that we discussed way back when GPT first surfaced. And your comment back then, and I pulled up the episode so I know I'm right.
Gotta be careful what I say around you.
Was that Google all of a sudden needs to be threatened by the emergence of what GPT provides?
Oh, I do. I still stand by that.
Is this the end of Google? Well, let's examine what we've sort of witnessed between that episode, which I forget the date, and now. It was some point early last year, or maybe even the fall of the year before.
It was about a year ago.
November, wasn't it?
November of 2 years ago. Yeah. So bottom line is that what we've witnessed is Google attempt to recreate their version and fail. And now, with the cultural change in the narratives of whatever it may be, and again, the chaos of what's ensuing, especially on this side of the pond with the election, maybe that factors into it, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But now we've witnessed them fall on their face again. So you said before I was able to, I guess, equate that, you still believe that this is a big threat to Google.
Well, let me clarify that, Mike. It's a threat to Google's search business. Yes.
Okay. So in that regard,
well, not if the alternatives, the AI alternatives, don't provide factual information.
Good point, Michelle. Good point.
I mean, maybe Google just needs to forget it and go back to doing what they've done best in terms of
they're not going to give up the AI crown.
Well,
there's a battle royale going on right now between Microsoft and Google.
True, but that's a measuring contest, isn't it?
Yes, but they're not
a measuring contest for what? And again, we're opening a can of worms here. But
for control of information on the internet,
data. It's control of data, right?
Agreed.
Because at that, you can then manipulate the information that's provided in the output, right? If Microsoft holds that, then Microsoft has the ability to do all those things. I'm not taking mine back out.
We're back in the conspiracy corner.
But bottom line here is that Google has a big issue on their hands. They can either own it or they can continuously try to fight the tidal wave. And we've seen what happens with that.
They wouldn't even apologize for what they did. They're not going to own it.
I understand that. So what's going to happen to their AI program if it's just, again, going to become the meme generator?
People are not going to trust it, which means they're not going to use it as quickly. And AI is a threat to Google searches. The whole concept, if anyone understands the business of search engine optimization, SEO, keywords, that goes away in an AI world. But it doesn't go away if people won't use the AI. So,
and that's where I'm saying that AI is being incorporated into everyday life now, right? Every app, every website, everything that you go to has some sort of an AI functional component into it. So in mass, it is educating the consumer that this is something that you need to get used to. Now, again, this requires specific technology that may or may not be accessible to everybody at any given time. But again, let's reel this back in from the business perspective. These are technological tools that you can use to your advantage to hone in and build on that community that you referenced earlier, build on your marketing strategies, and expand your targeted audience by using BD business development collaboration efforts.
100% agree. Michelle, final thoughts? My final thoughts. We'll wrap up. I'll do a quick summary.
Oh, there's so much today. It's too hard to decide. Watch this space.
Yeah. I'll give you a quick recap and you guys can both comment. Google's woke backlash was basically there were three different stories. One, they wouldn't make white people. Two, they denied that the October 7th invasion of Israel happened. And three, it opted for global nuclear annihilation over misgendering someone's pronoun. Separate from that, Ether has snuck in as the largest cryptocurrency in Wall Street, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. What do you guys think about this? Are these developments going to continue? We'll be talking about this later in the year, I'm sure. Final thoughts, Michelle?
I think that ultimately they have to find a way to fix how that works. I don't know what the answer to that is. Otherwise, and a few people in the Bolt chat, which has been really fantastic today. Thanks, guys, again for joining us. I think that if they don't fix it, people won't trust it, and ultimately no one will use them. The AI, ChatGPTs, Groks, Bards, Geminis of the world. They won't use them ultimately. Now, it might take a couple of years for that to happen, and less people will, that are interested in the truth or interested in factual information, they'll stop using it. They'll use it for other things, but maybe not as a replacement for Google search, which is one of the things that we talked about, unless they fix it.
I thought I heard you say Bard. I think that's like the Ask Jeeves of AI. Mike, what do you think?
Isn't it Gemini's now? Didn't they change Bard's name to Gemini?
Yes.
I think they should have kept it as Bard because at least
I'm sure they wish that too right now.
Something.
Mike, final thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think they should just rebrand to Bud Light. But again, so let's jump on the other side of the fence for a second. If a company needs to check off a bunch of these DEI boxes and woke boxes, why wouldn't they go to something like Gemini to pump out that content and put their brand on that? It could be a useful tool for that application as well. But again, if this is the reputation that they want, then they got it. I don't know what that means as far as a scalable business model and what that's going to take to improve that model over time. But like I mentioned, the source has been identified. We know what the problem is. Now they just need to remove that intermediary filter and let the system run its course. And if people start getting information that's accurate, even if it fits within their little bubble narrative, but at least if it has some sense of accuracy, then people will have, that adjective once again of Google it or Gemini it in order to see if anything is accurate or not.
I feel like there's a Bard Light meme in here somewhere. I want to thank everyone for listening. As always, the Bold folks have been great. We appreciate all the comments. You can find us every week. We come to you guys Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And you can find us on both X, Twitter, and YouTube. Business on the Block. This is your weekly insight into the digital media revolution. Our goal is to have a business conversation around the forces shaping finance, tech, and media. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next week. And peace.